June 4th, Sunday, 1893. It has been a while since there was a party hosted at Dunkelheit Manor, so I decided that it was time for a change. I had intended on meeting Charlotte's new tutor tonight, but it would seem that he politely declined my invitation. Even so, I wanted the party for other reasons as well. It just worked as a two birds, one stone sort of deal, should this Mr. Blackwood have accepted. Charlotte seemed to be feeling rather mixed over the whole ordeal, but I believe it was because her friends would be leaving early in the evening instead of staying for the whole party. I am sure that the redhead fancies the brunette and has little interest in staying should her person of affection not either. There is also what I suspect, and that is whether or not she'd like to act as though she's a socialite. I believe hanging out with the true elite such as myself make her feel as though she will be found as the lesser class that she is. Jean-Paul surprisingly made an appearance, but it was with his friend, Dr. Beaton's boy, Theodore, of course. I'm sure that hearing Dick would not be present and also helped in his decision. It had actually dawned on me that night that my usual guests, aside from the good doctor and constable, did not get many, if any, frequent interactions with my youngest daughter, despite her living here. So it would seem that her absence made their hungry curiosity grow into insatiable appetite of needing to know. She was always the sweet and well-behaved Dunkelheit child in their eyes, but as she reached her blossoming years, she also became the irresistible and cunning beauty. What an irresistible delicacy. Whilst Beaton kept his distance from her, as I instructed him to keep a leash on his son, that did not stop the others from our usual company from taking chance to start a conversation with my girl much later in the night. It took me a moment to notice as I was busy with my other party guests, but I chimed in when one of the Prosser twins had said,
"Oh yes, Charlotte, I heard that you are a musician as well."
Myers turned to my youngest child and inquired,
I am aware that your mother was a harpsichordist, but what about you? I've never had the pleasuring of hearing you play, or known what your forte is.
The other Prosser twin responded,
I believe her instrument is in the same family as the fiddle, a string instrument. I've seen her leave the music store with a purchase of a bow or rosin once or twice.
Eagerly, Augustus let out a haughty breath as he said,
An instrument with a bow. I can think of several ways to put those skills with your hands to good use.
My child made attempts to try and break away from the clamour and words, but Jedediah had stepped in her path as he spoke.
Where's the rush, love?
Charlotte's head almost involuntarily leaned back as she rolled her eyes and cracked her jaw in a rotating motion. She pulled her fan out and began to cover her face with it to help keep her poise under check.
Who would have thought that the Count would have birthed a quiet little mouse of a woman? Though that is how most women should behave, without the prattling gossip and big silly ideas. Leave the conversing and inventing to men. However, it is only polite and right that anyone should answer the questions asked of them. Don't you think?
Charlotte continued to sussily fan herself as she stared up at the man with telling eyes. I believe her mind was off to the place of not having anything nice to say, that it best not to say anything at all. I began to feel the need to interject myself, as there was no need for them to further test her patience.
Charlotte!
Jean-Paul's voice called out as he made a gesture to her from nearly across the room to her, but not far from me. She looked over to her brother, and I felt a bit of relief to see her find some sort of freeing excuse from her plight.
It's been too long since we've gathered like this. Come, we should all exchange words.
He almost sounded to be scripted, but it was a statement that the boy had the right to say. As my daughter began making her passage from the gentleman, I heard Jedediah and Andrew began to exchange words of toxicity about her sex. She suddenly halted in her tracks and turned back to listen. In due time, as my butler began to pass by, tray of filled wine and glass in hand, Charlotte grabbed one of the alcoholic beverages and drank it down in one gulp. Even Terrell was surprised by her actions, which was made evident by his alarmed voice letting out,
Miss Charlotte.
Charlotte placed the glass back on the tray and spoke.
If you will all excuse me, gentlemen, I think I shall retire for the evening before my brain shatters. Have a good night.
She then waltzed out of the room and towards the stairs, becoming out of view. Well, I began in a hushed tone. You don't see that every day. Jean-Paul, who had been standing not too far from me, nervously said,
She just downed a glass of wine. I thought that she does not drink.
She doesn't. But I guess tonight was an exception. I suppose when you are treated like a wild animal in a zoo to be gawked at, all while being sexualized and deemed simply for existing, and then you are subjected to hearing pompous and arrogant fools rant and blab on about how much more superior they are to you, all because of what's between their legs, on top of being reminded out of a terrible burdening guilt you've carried your entire life of the grief and loss. Well, it can certainly drive someone to drink. Not much time passed after the incident with my child, before I gave myself a temporary dismissal from the party simply so I could check on her in her bedroom. I know that she tended to feel her mood diminished to a sour one when there was mention of Lottie, and that most certainly was a mentioned topic in the earlier debacle that occurred. I came into the room and saw Charlotte sprawled out on the floor. Next to her was a bottle of wine, some of it spilled on the rug by her. She looked dead. I ran up to the seemingly unconscious woman immediately, checking for signs of breathing. "Charlotte!" I practically cried out. "Wake up, not you too. I asked you not to waste away, Charlotte. Don't do this to me!" I was convinced at first that she had made an attempt on her own life. That wasn't an uncommon occurrence in this estate after all. In my heated passion and near rage, I slapped her across the cheek in attempts to bring about consciousness. The young lady before me let out a soft and begrudged moan as her eyes fluttered to a state of awareness. More or less. "That better have just been wine you consumed." Charlotte scanned me up and down for a moment, almost seeming to be confused by my presence. Suddenly, she was hit by an enlightened look, as though she had a grasp on the entire situation. "I am assuming the worst, aren't I? All right, let's hear it. I know you just want to call me a hypocrite." However, there were no words in the beginning. I'd figured that my daughter was still just rather groggy from waking up. She pressed up against my body, assumingly for support at first.
Hey,
She began in a heavy breath. That sounded as though she was attempting to be seductive.
do you want to rape me?
She was asking almost playfully, without a care to her words. I sternly responded, "I want you to stay here in your room and sober up until you can ask that question without smiling. In fact, I don't want to hear you ask that question." She shifted more of her weight onto me, as though to try and sway me.
Oh, but you know that I know that it's what you think about.
"That is not true, and you're blooming drunk, Charlotte. Let's get you into bed."
Oh, so you're going to put me to bed?
She was saying it flirtatiously still, inserting things where they don't belong. I suppose she got that from me.
Are you going to use this to do so?
She reached her hands for my groin and more or less got a feel of what she was searching for, though it is never hard to miss that organ of my body, especially if that is what someone is seeking. I roughly grabbed Charlotte by her biceps, almost in attempts to shake her into reality as I pushed her away from me. "Enough. You're drunk."
I'm awake, and I am aware.
She gave out a sigh as she threw most of her weight backward, using my grip to her advantage.
I don't know if you know, but I have been ready for, at the very least, the past 15 years.
Ready for what? I began to try and stand the girl up with me.
What you've been grooming me for.
I have not groomed you for a damn thing, Charlotte. At least not for anything you did not ask for, like being my secretary.
Rubbish.
She almost said this under her breath, and in a whisper. I led her to the bed whilst in arm's reach of her. She pressed back against me in a defiant way, and gave me a look that spoke for itself.
You're off it if you think I'm sleeping with a corset on.
Apparently you're not drunk enough to lose all common sense.
I only had an entire bottle.
You do not drink, Charlotte. The effects are more likely to be stronger for you. I sat her down on the bed, almost forcefully, and then I rang the bell for the maid. In time, Bernice finally entered, and I instructed her to dress her mistress for bed and take care of her. I returned to the party to see off the remaining guests. Jean-Paul kept staring at me with almost these suspicious and disbelieving eyes. It was as though he was staring at someone he knew committed a murder and was trying to warn them that he was aware. No idea where he gets off always acting that way around me.